The page turns quietly. A memoir, published after death, arrives not with fanfare, but with weight. The name on the cover is familiar: Virginia Giuffre, a woman who, for years, stood at the center of one of the most explosive legal and moral battles in recent royal memory. But this time, she is not giving an interview. She is not standing before cameras. She is gone. And what remains are her words: final, deliberate, and sharp. Before we dive in, there's something I want to share with you. Many of you are watching, following these stories, tracing every twist, but you haven't subscribed. If you're part of that silent majority, now is the time. Subscribe to Crownverse, where royal history lives on, even in its most controversial chapters. In the days following Virginia Giuffre's passing, her final project surfaced: a memoir, completed before her death, but held under strict embargo. Its release is not just literary, it is political, legal, emotional, and it forces open a door the monarchy hoped had closed quietly. The contents, as they appear, are not merely reflections. They are accusations, detailed accounts of interactions and environments once denied, dismissed, or buried under settlements and silences. But now, with no further court appearances and no press tours, these words speak without restraint. Among the most explosive of the revelations is her renewed account of Prince Andrew. While much of the world remembers the infamous photograph, the BBC interview, and the out-of-court settlement that followed, what this memoir presents is something different: texture, atmosphere, context. A portrait painted not in headlines, but in gestures, glances, and unease. She describes in one chapter an evening in a London townhouse, its location known to many who followed the case. But here she adds detail, not new faces, but new feelings. The sensation of control, the manner in which doors were locked behind her, not with keys, but with assumptions that she was there to be seen, used, and forgotten. The prince, she writes, did not behave like a predator. That was never the image. Instead, he behaved like a man who believed the room belonged to him, that nothing inside it could be held against him, that the silence of those present, the hosts, the aides, the staff, was guaranteed. The writing is sparse, not theatrical. She does not embellish. In many ways, that makes the allegations more damning. They do not seek to persuade. They simply document. There is a moment, brief but arresting, when she recounts hearing laughter from the hallway. Not malicious, not loud, but detached. She describes it as the sound of people amused by their own power and oblivious to its consequences. It is not only Prince Andrew who appears in these recollections. Names known from court filings re-emerge, some masked behind initials, others not. But it is Andrew who lingers, not for what he said, but for what he represented. A world in which young women were currency and royalty was beyond reproach. The memoir does not provide photographic evidence. It does not attempt to relitigate the case. What it does, and perhaps intentionally, is widen the lens, to show how systemic power shelters individual misdeeds, how status becomes silence, and how even decades later, those rooms remain vivid in memory. Palace sources have not issued a formal comment. That silence, once strategic, now feels strained. Because with the publication of this memoir, the case is no longer just legal. It is historical, it is emotional, and it is documented, permanently. There are questions the book raises without naming. What did others know? Who ensured that certain visits went unrecorded? Why were calendars adjusted without trace? And what does it mean when someone of such privilege can vanish from accountability, only to reappear at garden parties and family photo calls? The monarchy, already battling perception issues on multiple fronts, faces a new dilemma. Not a lawsuit, not a court case, but a cultural reckoning. Because memoirs are not judged like testimonies. They are read like human experiences, and in that form, they reach deeper. Giuffre's words are careful. There is no hysteria, no page-long accusations. Instead, she offers detail through metaphor. She compares being chosen for travel to being loaned out. She likens certain greetings to rehearsed scripts, and she recalls how names like Andrew carried different weight in different rooms, sometimes a joke, sometimes a warning. The memoir does not end in anger. It ends in clarity. She writes about reclaiming her name, not through courts, but through telling, about removing power from places where secrecy once lived, and about making sure that silence, especially the kind enforced by money or fear, never wins. For those inside Buckingham Palace, the implications are heavy, because this is not just about defending a duke. It's about defending the institution that enabled his comfort, and that, even now, allows his quiet presence at certain events without consequence. King Charles has not spoken publicly, nor has William. But the pressure builds not through press questions, but through public perception. What does it mean to modernize if shadows remain unaddressed? How can a royal family represent values if it cannot address past complicity? Some observers note that this release comes at a time when the monarchy is attempting to refocus, streamlining its roles, projecting unity, and elevating younger figures. But history has a way of returning, and this time it returns in print. There is no statute of limitations on memory. And for Giuffre, this memoir is her final act of resistance, one that transforms her from witness to author, from plaintiff to narrator, from victim to historian. The world may not see new charges, the palace may not issue statements, but the truth, as she experienced it, now lives on record, and its presence cannot be ignored. There is one passage, nearly buried near the middle of the book, that reads like a whisper. Some men enter a room and expect silence. Others enter and hear it. The difference is everything. It is this kind of writing, not inflammatory, but haunting, that ensures her voice lingers. What the royal family does next remains unknown. Perhaps nothing. Perhaps a distancing. Perhaps a slow erasure of certain faces from certain ceremonies. But whatever the strategy, it now unfolds under a different light. Because now, the public doesn't just remember a photograph or an interview. They remember a woman, her name, her words, and her final unfiltered truth. If you followed this story, if you believe in untold voices being heard, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us here on Crownverse, where royal history lives on, even in its most controversial chapters.